taking photos of it.
Okay.
Just to let that know when they go up.
Okay.
Yeah, just because there isn't something that I like
Okay.
So, thank you.
Just asking them if it's okay if
Just
they take
making
a picture.
just to make sure they say it when they go up there that they're okay with that.
Okay. Yeah. With all.
I'm gonna ask that for everyone to give permission when they go up there. Because sometimes it's people's slides, it's ongoing work, like it's people's homelands, right?
Okay.
And I just want to be sensitive to that. ¿Hay sillas aquí? Por ahí. Aquí.
You have a copy of the exactly order of the presenter or something?
I don't have a copy of it right now. I didn't print anything out.
Okay, so
I have my laptop here. I could just pull it out, but
yeah, maybe so you said like, oh, the next one is because
Okay.
maybe they could be confused because in the program the order is different.
got it. Okay. Sorry, to go back, I downloaded it, but
They confirm it's okay for them.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
Okay. And then I have a list of presenters. So first we'll use the Sami.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So maybe you need it somewhere to put your.
Yeah, I'll put it back.
Okay.
Right, I'll just put it right here. Right here.
Maybe there.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna just use this as the. Oh, but there's so many people who are standing. Okay. We have a seat up here. If someone, 2 seats up here. People want to come sit. Okay. Some people want to stand. All right. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Chakatotesia in my language. We're really glad to have all of you here for our session today. I want to just welcome again that we are here always on Indigenous territories and lands, and particularly here at the Musica territory and community. Although we are joined here by many other Indigenous communities representing their lands, their ecosystems, their relatives. So thankful to have all of you here. A few things as we get started. One, we have many different languages here, so presenters, please think about speaking slowly because we have translators here. We are going to be going in and out of different languages, so please have your app open so that you can understand the incredible messages that our speakers are bringing. A second part is just to be mindful of photos. People are talking about their communities, their sacred ecosystems. It's not just data points, it's people's lives. And so to be mindful of that as we take photos. I ask the speakers when they come up to just give permission for their photos of the slides and also of the regalia to be to speak if they're okay with that or not. Just because we want to protect our peoples and our speakers as much as we want to protect our sacred ecosystems. Okay, if we can go ahead and get to our first slide here. So everyone just know if you're a speaker, you need to point your pointer up here. Let's see if it's working. All right, there we go. So again, just a bit of a reminder of why we're having this session. We want to share the real life experiences of Indigenous communities, local communities, ethnic communities, and how they are doing community-led Indigenous work or community-led work to protect their biodiversity and to think about conservation needs. We are going to discuss a variety of Indigenous or data governance models that people are utilizing. Sorry, I keep on using Indigenous. And then identify the different principles, standards, protocols that communities are developing. How all of us in the biodiversity conservation realm can benefit from and learn from these and think about how we can apply these to the communities that we work with. And again, how can all those also inform local policy? So we know biodiversity monitoring is essential for conservation needs, also for community needs, and again, bringing back data genealogy and relationships, and that Indigenous communities have place-based expertise, ethnic communities, local communities have place-based expertise. How can we as a conservation community learn from them? And so I'm so excited to have a variety of leaders and speakers today representing a very wide regional range, right? And so each community brings expertise and knowledge and experiences from the communities they work with, from the communities they're part of. And I think here largely, as you've heard the last couple of days, we're trying to think about how we can build this up, how we can help inform our GBIF, our OBIS, our geo community to really think about this. So here's a list of our speakers. We did have one speaker not come, or not show, so we might have a little bit of extra time. But in the meantime, please be mindful, we do have some Ignite talks that are 5 minutes. We have some longer presentations that are 10 minutes. We will have timekeepers to keep us all on task. And I know each of us could be giving a keynote in itself, so thank you for that. Again, keeping your questions to the end, we'll have about 25 minutes to have a discussion. And again, thinking about respect for recordings and videos, speakers are going to say if they're okay or not having photos taken. Again, this is not just data, this is also people's ecosystems and homelands, and so we want to respect that. With that, looking forward to first presenting Susanna and talking about Sami. Let's give her a round of applause. The pointer? Okay. And then you just need to hold it close.
Should I clip it?
I think it's just to hold it, but it's up to you.
I think I need. Gito, thank you for the introduction. I would like to start by acknowledging the Indigenous people present here today and lands of the Indigenous peoples which we are visiting, their ancestors, forthcoming generations, and those present today. I'm grateful for the GBF task force for inviting us and setting the agenda for upholding Indigenous sovereignty within the GBF. This presentation is based on a collaboration between those listed here. And that is Associated Professor Per Axelsson, who is present here, and Dr. Veronica Johansson, also present, maybe wave so people see. And we have also Marhetta, who is not present here today. She is a biologist and represents the Sami Council, wherein she works with environmental science. And we also represent the Gita Sapmi Network, which is an extension of the global indigenous data sovereignty, promoting care principles across Sapmi, that is Norway, Sweden, and Finland. I am Finbenailo Ante Jagarnils Mahte Ristena Susanna. That is my name by my ancestors and placed me and by my heritage to the Northern Sami community. And I work as an epidemiologist at the Center for Sami Health Research at UIT, the Arctic University of Norway. In our pilot project, we asked, how do we uphold Sami sovereignty within the GBF infrastructure? So these are very preliminary thoughts and work we are just recently starting to look into. First, a little bit context. Sami is the traditional homeland for the Sami people, and the geographical borders are not clearly defined. But the Sami regions spans across 4 countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula in Russia. And you see it's the upper part there, yes. Thank you, Per. So we are far away from Colombia. But the Sami people consider themselves as one people despite national borders. And currently, it's not so easy to find Sami data in the GBF infrastructure. So we think that it's a good idea to use this geographical defined region, the Sapmi, as I presented it, to define what may constitute Sami data within the GBF infrastructure. And the reason for this is, that Sami have been living and coexisting with reindeers here in this region for at least thousands of years. And today, reindeer herding is still a very culturally significant and specific trading and a way of living for the Sami in Sweden and Norway. Meaning that only Sami that have Sami descendants are allowed to practice traditional reindeer herding. So this is my examples, which I will provide later, are mainly from Sami reindeer herding communities. And the reason why we have picked this is because there is an accumulation of traditional knowledge and expertise and intelligence within the Sami reindeer herding community that is not visible today in data. I have to also mention that fjord fishing and salmon fishing in rivers are also very important and culture-specific trading for Sami people, but they are not mentioned here in this pilot study. Next. So we are looking into if we should have a Sami hosted portal, including also local context notices and labels. And we find several pros and also some cons, which we will list here. And of course, it's very good that having such a hosted portal as the Sami language is very much present, and data is available for the Sami people in their own language. And also Sami data, not the least, becomes defined. What is Sami data? And it's a way of repatriating our data back to us. And the data collections may become more meaningful to Sami people and local communities if we have our own hosted portal, because this implementing the care principles into this Sami hosted portal and in the guidelines introduced by it force or promote collaboration between researchers and Sami communities. That is at least the intention, that we want that researchers engage more closely with the communities. Also, the reuse and use of data, ideally, will be followed by using of Sami guidelines that are, we support the care principles, but have also our own indigenous data guidelines, which are called SODA principles and are comparable to the care principles. Also, the unique identifier makes it possible for us to trace where data is used and reused, which is very important, especially when policies are developed which are relevant for the Sami communities. And not the least, having a Sami portal, engaging with Sami people will enrich data, of course. Also, there are certainly some cons. Who decides what constitutes Sami data, what is relevant for Sami interests? This is also always will be a challenge and disputed, surely, but we have to start somewhere. It's a question if everything should be measured. What should be measured? Is it bias that we have available, the data we have available there? Also, is this in line with Sami values? This is also an important question that needs to be clarified. And there's also a great variation of traditional knowledge and biological cultural knowledge by geographical region. And there's a complexity in how the Sami communities are built with Sami Sida, the clans, and the larger families. So, but you see, there's more advantages than limitations. And yet we haven't spotted the blind zones. Probably they will maybe appear when we start to work deeper. So some short examples. How much time do you have? Okay, 10 minutes. So what we think of, we have divided this into three types of data. First, we have already the data that exists currently in the GBF portal. So what should we do with that? We suggest or want to explore how it works adding an associated extension that is providing information beyond the core data records. What is highly significant, what is less significant, what needs to be decided of significance levels. For reindeer herding communities, or it's easy in a way to know what is highly relevant. It's amongst others this first Danes Jägel picture shows one of the most important items, food items for reindeers, and of course we know this is quite significant. We know this is very significant for many Sami communities. So it's easy to, in a way, repatriate it by adding extension, we think at least. And we will also maybe explore the possibility to add a local context disclosure notice about the provenance. And next is the what about reuse of data that is defined as Sami. Is that traced by DOI? It should be a question mark there at the second bullet point, but I missed it. I believe it's not currently, but maybe conditions could be included in local context notices. I don't know if that's a possibility. We have to talk more with the local context experts about that. However, when it comes to the European Union, they have said that or demands data management plans listed here as DMPs. Every researcher has to make that, and we think it's a very good idea also here to already start to ask them to add local context notices. How do you plan to address this? And it should be uploaded possibly into the hosted portal to trace use. And lastly, new data collections. Again, very significant item for reindeer herding Sami communities. We need to start to use the TKBC labels available in local context. We now understand that at this stage. So we need to also make the Sami communities aware of that, and the universities of Shirley, so that they can put it in the data management plans as a demand. So closing now. This is what we think about an overview of Sami hosted portal. We think it's also very important to that the research or the users indicate when they're logging the purpose of this downloading of the data sets or data. Is it for research and education, or is it for policy development? So, and in particular for policies, it's very important that Sami communities and governing bodies are alerted. And independent of what the purpose of the use is, we find the local context, BC and TK label notices useful. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to have past price. Oh, and this is us. Okay. Oh, and me. Okay. Presenting together.
You can have that after yesterday's session.
All right. Cast price. Take it away. You're starting.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We got the slides.
We have some seats up here. And right here. So seats.
Do you want to move the slides to now?
Yeah, where's Mom?
You
be the slide master. Okay, thank you everyone for coming to the session today. So Lydia and I are going to be speaking about our new Indigenous task force within GBIF. And I'd first also like to acknowledge all the lands that we're meeting on today, and also acknowledge the First Nations people gathered here today and across the conference. Okay, so first of all, GBIF, so I think everybody should have a bit of understanding. Next slide, sorry. Next slide. I think everybody should have an understanding of what GBIF is over this part of the conference and by now. But what I'd really like to focus on, and what we're going to focus on, is the purpose of our Indigenous task force within GBIF, but also what's new about the task force is how GBIF now are actually supporting the embedding of the care principles across the network. I'll hand over to Lydia.
So at this point, you probably have heard of the GBIF Indigenous Data Governance Task Force. Obviously, many of you are here today. Again, this is the first of its kind in any global biodiversity. This is the first year we're getting started. So we know that we have gaps in our representation. Many of you are here and have communicated that, and we hear you, we appreciate that. But here's the group that has got started to really build this out. And again, our goal is to build in the care principles into already existing frameworks, to figure out how to make them aligned, to figure out how to better amplify a variety of voices and considerations. Next slide.
Okay, so I think we're sort of repeating ourselves a little bit at the moment. I think Lydia's sort of touched already on our purpose and mandate. And yes, it's definitely about strengthening our Indigenous governance across the network. And how we'll be doing that, we'll be setting up some foundational materials, working with our nodes across the network as well, and then supporting different reviews of technical and pilot projects, which Lydia will touch on a little bit later, and then how we share those findings and recommendations across the network back to our nodes, communities, and also our Indigenous communities. And it's, from a personal note, it's a really exciting project to be part of this task force, and I'm really proud to be the Australian representative on this task force as well.
Great. I think you've all seen this slide at this point if you've been coming to our sessions, but again, Indigenous peoples' definitions of data is a bit more expansive than how we traditionally define data. This is important, right? Because it has, as I've said a bit in the beginning of this session, it has broad implications to our relationships, to our ecosystems, to our sacred ecosystems, to our sacred relatives. And for better or for worse, we have not traditionally been part of how we define data or who we collect data or where it goes. So by broadening this definition, it's really an opportunity to bring many of our colleagues in, Indigenous and non-Indigenous allies, to really help expand how we think about data and how we steward it in protecting all of our sacred ecosystems.
So we just want to touch on what Indigenous data sovereignty is, and it's the right of Indigenous peoples and nations to govern the collections, ownership, and application of their data. So when we think about Indigenous data as well, a lot of our Indigenous data is actually held in institutes, and institutes, governments, organisations, research institutes, as well as GBIF. And so what our task force is really looking at doing is how can we govern that data that's sitting within GBIF and other institutes, and hopefully even from our task force that will provide recommendations that can even extend broader past GBIF to other communities or other organisations and institutes and data actors working within this space. So I think it's a really foundational project as well.
Thank you. Next slide. And I think a really important piece of this is we're talking about the Indigenous data governance. And I think people understand broadly the idea of governance, but I think there's a difference that we want to really articulate, the difference between governance of data and data for governance, right? They're not one and the same. And particularly on how communities are thinking, them specifically, how can we use this data to rebuild our nations, to protect our nations, to protect our communities and those sacred relatives. What are the indicators and measures? Are those ones that are appropriate for Indigenous communities? Are those ones that they define, or are those defined by external researchers who might not understand that measuring this particular spot isn't as important, culturally important to communities. Is this a biodiversity hotspot? If so, how do communities inform what that means, right? 5 minutes. So,
Next slide. And why we're looking at care with FAIR is the FAIR principles aren't enough. They don't address the historical issues surrounding data for our people. They don't provide the cultural frameworks. They don't support our Indigenous needs, priorities and wants around data. They don't provide the appropriate access to the data that we need to protect some of our cultural and intellectual property or our Indigenous knowledges. And so that's why it's really important that we actually pair care with FAIR throughout this process.
so you've heard us talk about the priorities. Next slide. So we have been conducting the survey. If you haven't taken it, please take it. We need your voice. We're building out the guidance and recommendations. We're really trying to pilot in, as you've seen one example at the keynote, local context labels. And I think importantly, we're developing different interest group formations. We've heard we need Indigenous communities. We've heard that we need researchers who are working with Indigenous communities and want to know how to do the work right. We've heard we need legal, and we've heard that we need technical. We want to hear if there's other categories that we have not yet met, because together the task force is meeting tomorrow to discuss the next steps. So please come and talk to us again.
This is just some of our little recommendations, or some of our long-term goals. I won't read through them all, but what I think is really important to take home today is that we're only supported for 1 year at the moment, and this takes transformational change. So we're talking about a paradigm shift, you know, and supporting different governance structures. And anybody that is into data management knows that that doesn't happen overnight. And as Lydia mentioned yesterday, some nations have had over 500 years of colonisation. So in 1 year, we're only tipping on the iceberg of what's actually will be needed to support the care principles within research infrastructures. But again, it's very exciting, and it's really great that GBIF has recognised that the FAIR principles aren't enough and that they're supporting this task force for the next year and then hopefully further past this.
I think it's important, there's also ongoing colonization as well, right? I think many of that is something that's been echoed and communicated. So again, we want to recognize, first and foremost, Indigenous rights, recognize Indigenous peoples as rights holders, not just stakeholders, there's right holders. And we want to be able to embrace the fair and care principles in complementary capacities and continue to build trust and collaboration with many nations that are represented, because we can't do good science if we don't have that. And then, of course, thinking about how we protect Indigenous knowledge from the past, the present, and into the future. So we want to really position at the end of this, or continue to build GBIF as a leading example. Next slide. So you probably have heard this enough, but please take our survey. Thank you.
And one more slide. And stay in touch with us, and please come along, because as we were saying, it takes a transformational shift, but we need everybody in here to be advocating for the care principles and supporting us. And if there's any skills or technical, or you just want to be involved, please reach out to Lydia and I as well, or any GBIF member task force that you have here today.
Thank you. And now we're going to give Cass a round of applause here. And now we're going to welcome up Josel. It's time to take out your translation, if you have the opportunity to. For Mati. Josel Mati. Josel, thank you. And please have your translation ready if people don't have the app, the program. Thank you. Does anyone need this QR code? It's in Portuguese? Okay. Do you mind carrying this just so I can help? Just so.
Claro que vai. Você
Do you
pode.
necesita ayuda con esto?
Você fala muito bem, só fala um pouquinho devagar e faz olá, em vez de olá. Vai dar tudo certo.
Vou botar isso aqui.
Não, acho que é
Sim?
melhor você falar.
Sim, né?
Testa. Oi, oi.
Oi, oi.
Hello.
Tudo certo. Tem que ficar aqui. Bom dia, não sei falar espanhol nem inglês, falo português mesmo. Eu me chamo Josiel Jacinto Pereira Juruna, sou da etnia do povo Juruna, moro na terra indígena Paxampa e também onde fica instalada a hidrelétrica de barragem de Belo Monte. Eu sou pesquisador indígena, trabalho com monitoramento já faz 11 anos. Um monitoramento qual eu faço parte se chama MAT, Monitoramento Territorial Independente. Então, ele é um monitoramento feito por indígenas, cientistas e ribeirinhos. Bom, o que é o MAT, né? O MAT foi formado pela união, né, de ribeirinhos, indígenas e cientistas, devido a alguns impactos na nossa região de uma hidrelétrica, né? Então a gente se uniu para que a gente formasse um monitoramento, que ele fosse um monitoramento feito para nós mesmos, né? Tanto os indígenas como os ribeirinhos. E a gente conseguiu a parceria de alguns cientistas para trabalhar com a gente, né? E hoje a gente faz a equipe que nós somos formados em 24 pessoas, né? Tanto indígena como ribeirinho e cientistas. Essa é uma equipe que trabalha com a gente, né? Esse monitoramento que a gente faz, a gente monitora várias coisas, vários impactos que acontecem na nossa região e também a gente monitora a nossa segurança alimentar, né? O que a gente come, o que a gente não come. E esse monitoramento, ele vem, né, trazido porque várias pessoas foram à nossa região monitorar algumas coisas que estavam acontecendo na nossa região, só que nós nunca tínhamos acesso a esses dados. Esses dados a gente nunca via, a gente nunca viu resultados, né? E aí partiu que a gente se interessasse para a gente mesmo fazer nosso próprio monitoramento, para que a gente pudesse ter acesso aos nossos próprios dados. Não foi uma coisa muito fácil, devido a algumas pessoas da academia ter vindo ao nosso território e ter levado só o nosso conhecimento, só o que a gente sabia fazer, né? Então a gente reverteu esse papel, então hoje nós somos protagonistas do nosso próprio trabalho, então a gente faz o nosso monitoramento, nós decidimos o que vai ser feito com nossos dados, nós decidimos para quem nós queremos mostrar e nós mesmos analisamos os dados, né? Sou muito... tem algum monitoramento, né, que sempre a gente faz em campo e a gente tem uma ajuda, né, de algumas pessoas que ajudam a gente, como o MPF, que faz parte da nossa equipe também. A barragem, né, ela foi implementada na nossa região, então o rio ele tinha um ciclo natural, né, de enchente e seca, né, 6 meses de cheia, 6 meses de seca. Então, devido a essa barragem ser implementada na nossa região, a gente passou a ter 1 mês só de cheia e os outros praticamente 9 meses de seca, né? Isso impactou muito nossa região. Então, a gente agora no nosso rio, onde a gente mora, no nosso território, a gente tem aí 130 quilômetros de seca, praticamente de pedras, né? E isso foi um impacto muito grande para a gente, que afetou nosso povo, afetou as pessoas que moravam naquela região. E com o nosso monitoramento, a gente conseguiu mostrar a realidade mesmo do que estava acontecendo no nosso território. Como eu tinha falado, né, o nosso rio ele foi desviado 70% da água do nosso rio ele foi desviado para geração de energia, né? E a gente ficou com o restante de 30%, ficou passando para a nossa região. Então, o que a gente tinha antes de 100% de toda a água do rio, hoje a gente só tem 30% e 70% foi para geração de energia. essa geração de energia, né, como tem um órgão responsável lá pelo licenciamento, que é o IBAMA, né, e essa quantidade de água que foi passada para a nossa região, ela foi feito um estudo muito mal feito, a gente não foi consultado sobre isso, né, a gente não teve uma consulta prévia, livre informada, né, foi feito um estudo sem a gente saber, sem as pessoas entenderem o que significava, por exemplo, o estudo de ectiofauna, né, que é o estudo que determina a quantidade de água que pode ser passada por uma região, né, e a gente não foi consultado sobre isso, e aí eles determinaram a quantidade de água para passar para a nossa região, que hoje se chama hidrograma A e hidrograma B, né. E o que a gente busca com esse monitoramento que a gente está fazendo é justamente isso, mudar a quantidade de água que passa para a nossa região. Em vez de ser 30% da água, a gente quer aumentar essa quantidade para que a nossa região, né, ela tenha vida, né, para que ela tenha o fauna, tenha a flora, as coisas conseguem se regenerar e conseguir sobreviver devido a esse impacto que vem acontecendo na nossa região. E a gente começou, né, um trabalho que, como dá para ver na foto, é um trabalho de monitoramento de reprodução de peixes. É um local que a gente chegou a perder, que era o local onde os peixes entravam para se reproduzir. Então, a gente perdeu esses locais devido à quantidade de água que não tem mais na nossa região. Então, a gente decidiu fazer esse monitoramento, que é o monitoramento de Piracema, né, que a gente chama, que é um nome local lá da nossa região. A gente, para ilustrar para vocês, são algumas ovas de alguns peixes, né, que como a quantidade de água da nossa região ela é reduzida, e quem controla essa água é a Norte Energia, né, que é a empresa que opera a barragem. Então, ela que decide a quantidade de água e quando vai passar, né. Então, um dia o rio está de um jeito, na verdade, uma hora o rio está de um jeito, e na outra hora o rio está de outro. Uma hora ele tem pouca água, outra hora tem mais uma água. Então, isso impactou totalmente tanto a gente como os peixes, né? Impactou muito que os peixes de agora não têm mais noção de como é o rio, e eles acabam botando suas ovas no seco e acabam morrendo. A gente tem feito esse monitoramento, né, como eu falei para vocês, e ele é um monitoramento que eu vi muitas pessoas já conversando, em alguns stands eu já passei, né, consegui ouvir, que falando de monitoramentos vivos, dados vivos, falando em monitoramento em territórios, falando em monitoramento de indígenas, né, e povos tradicionais e tudo. E esse monitoramento que a gente faz, ele é específico e ele é feito só por povos tradicionais. Claro, a gente também depende dos cientistas, né, porque a gente precisa divulgar e a gente precisa sistematizar esses dados, né? A gente precisa guardar esses dados em algum lugar e fazer com que esses dados sejam divulgados para outras pessoas, né? Então, e aí a gente conseguiu, né, que esses dados fossem da gente mesmo. Então, o protagonista dos nossos dados somos nós. E não, então, nada menos do que nós mesmos apresentar nossos próprios dados, né? E não outras pessoas apresentarem os dados que são estudados na nossa região. E a gente teve, né, várias publicações, teve essa aqui, não estou enganado? Tivemos uma publicação na SAIS, tivemos outra, mais duas publicações, e em todas as nossas publicações, nós, todos que trabalhamos no monitoramento, nós fomos autor do nosso próprio trabalho. Então, foi uma exigência que a SAIS mesmo e outras revistas quiseram que nós publicássemos, mas a gente fez uma exigência que nós seríamos protagonistas do nosso próprio trabalho. Até como dá para vocês verem aqui no canto, são todas as pessoas que trabalham com a gente, então todas são autores também, junto com a gente, não só os pesquisadores, não só eu como pesquisador, mas toda a minha equipe que trabalha comigo, todos levaram o nome também na publicação, que eu acho que isso que é o importante. Quando você vê o seu nome reconhecido, quando você vê o seu nome também no trabalho onde você fez parte, que aí só isso faz com que a pessoa se dedique mais e que a pessoa tenha prazer, né, de trabalhar com algumas pessoas. Meu tempo também já acabou, só queria agradecer, né, por ter esse espaço aqui da gente divulgar o trabalho da gente, o tempo é curto, mas se vocês quiserem conversar depois, a gente pode conversar, pode bater um papo, posso falar mais para vocês o trabalho que a gente faz. E a gente tem nossos dados no Cílio BR também, né? E eu acho que é isso, né? Acabou. Tudo bem, gente. Obrigado.
Amazing work. I want to take time to just acknowledge, I know the translation wasn't working, which is unfortunate. And I think as we talk about accessibility for many of our communities, the frustration you might have felt not being able to understand and hear is something that many of our community members are experiencing on a regular basis. It's good for us to be uncomfortable with not hearing so that we can make it more accessible for everyone, right? With that being said, I want to introduce our next speaker. Oh no, my notes went away. Give me 1 second. Too many photos. All right, our next speaker is Maria Helena. I'm talking about the Monterio Comunitorio. So once again, have your translation apps available and open. And thank you and welcome. Okay. Does everyone have the translation app? Hopefully, no. Can we get the QR code? Make sure we have that.
Yes, but we can have like 1 minute to...
Yeah, let's give us a quick minute. QR code.
¿Quieres pasar tú?
Como tú quieras.
No, tú eres la presentadora.
Pues si quieres, yo puedo ir pasando.
Lo tienes que hacer aquí.
Aquí es siguiente.
Ah, no, la siguiente está aquí. Y apuntar al
Listo, vale, gracias.
Hey, thank you.
Ok. Bueno, buenas tardes. Yo voy a conversar un poco sobre algunos retos que hemos enfrentado desde el Instituto Humboldt en Colombia, que es el instituto de, me lo pongo así, ok, perdón, de investigaciones sobre biodiversidad de Colombia. Algunos retos que hemos enfrentado a la hora de trabajar el monitoreo comunitario de biodiversidad y también presentar algunas herramientas o algunos, digamos, como mecanismos que hemos usado para sobrellevar esos retos. Todo esto está en prueba, entonces también muy chévere poder estar aquí y escuchar también ustedes cómo los han podido sobrellevar, y estamos muy abiertos también a recibir el feedback pues sobre lo que les vamos a contar. Listo, entonces para empezar es importante pues recordar que el monitoreo comunitario de biodiversidad no es lo mismo que solo el monitoreo de biodiversidad a secas, y hay varias características, no voy a entrar en mucho detalle, pero pues ahí pueden verlas, de lo que significa un monitoreo comunitario de biodiversidad o cuando hablamos de estos procesos, y especialmente resaltar que el propósito de los monitoreos en general pues es poder tomar decisiones, no es solamente tener datos por tener datos, o hacer procesos participativos para que las comunidades recolecten los datos, pero hasta ahí llegue el proceso participativo, sino que finalmente los datos que estas comunidades están colectando les puedan servir, ser útiles para sus procesos y también pues poder tomar decisiones con esta información. Voy a resaltar la última característica que está ahí, que es uno de los, pues el primer reto que queremos como conversar aquí, y es justamente la gobernanza sobre los datos, el manejo de los datos y también la publicación de esta información por parte de las comunidades. Entonces, en conjunto con el CIP Colombia, que es el nodo oficial pues de GIF para Colombia, hemos utilizado algunos de estos mecanismos, como les decía, pues están en prueba, los hemos probado en algunos proyectos y han funcionado, pero pues sabemos que se requiere mucho más trabajo. Entonces, uno de ellos es que pues recomendamos siempre a las comunidades hacer un comité de propiedad intelectual en los diferentes proyectos en los que estén trabajando, y en estos comités que puedan ir decidiendo pues por ellos mismos qué roles van a tener dentro de pues estos proyectos, también sus autorías, qué se puede publicar y qué de pronto pues no quieren publicar, también las licencias que van a usar y bueno, diferentes reglas y decisiones que deben tomar a la hora de manejar estos datos. Y lo interesante de tener estos comités es que pues estos siguen vivos en el tiempo, entonces la idea es que a partir de estos comités se puedan tener unos acuerdos de propiedad intelectual explícitos y documentados, pero esto se pueda también monitorear en el tiempo para ver si están funcionando o no, y pues dentro de estos mismos comités pues puedan surgir estas conversaciones para actualizarlos o no. Y esto está relacionado con el segundo mecanismo, que son los memorandos de entendimiento, que ha sido chévere escuchar en otras presentaciones que también los han usado, y en estos memorandos pues digamos que lo que se busca es que puedan participar con otras organizaciones que quieran venir a sus territorios a hacer diferentes proyectos, a hacer uso de datos y demás, y que las normas y los acuerdos a los que se lleguen pues queden como muy claros desde el principio, sobre todo para construir confianza desde el principio con las diferentes entidades pues que quieran participar con ellos en proyectos o quieran usar sus datos o quieran venir a sus territorios pues a hacer algún tipo de proyecto, pero también que las relaciones pues puedan ser un poco más horizontales. Entonces estos mecanismos nos han funcionado, pero pues sabemos que existen muchos más. El siguiente reto, que también lo hemos escuchado en el Congreso en varias oportunidades, es cómo conectar estos datos locales a nivel local con toma de decisiones a diferentes escalas y con análisis de pronto a escalas más amplias, o incluso para todo este tema de reporte de indicadores para el marco global de biodiversidad. Entonces sabemos que este es un reto enorme, pero Lina Sánchez, que es una colega del instituto, y 70 autores más, realizaron o pues construyeron esta herramienta que se llama el ciclo de monitoreo, y esta herramienta ha ido evolucionando en el tiempo en el instituto, la estamos usando en varios proyectos, la estamos probando, no puedo entrar como en mucho detalle por tiempo, pero ahí está el QR. Es un libro completo, digamos está aplicado para Colombia, pero es un ciclo y es una herramienta tan adaptable que se puede utilizar en diferentes territorios, diferentes comunidades, diferentes como tipos de actores. Es adaptativo, es flexible, digamos que es una herramienta para organizar y documentar cualquier proceso de monitoreo. Y lo que esperamos y la apuesta que tenemos es que si se siguen estos pasos y estas fases que propone este ciclo, se puedan combinar diferentes fuentes de información de diferentes actores, diferentes objetivos para producir indicadores de estado y tendencia de biodiversidad que se puedan usar pues en otras escalas. Esa es como la apuesta y pues la herramienta que estamos usando frente a ese reto. Y por último, el último reto, que sabemos que hay muchos más, pero el que vamos a conversar aquí es el sostenimiento de estos procesos en el tiempo. Ese es un reto muy grande en términos de monitoreo. El monitoreo en general necesita tiempo y el trabajo con comunidades de diferentes actores y demás también necesita tiempo. Entonces, frente a esto, nuestra apuesta actualmente está siendo construir redes colaborativas, pues en este caso de monitoreo comunitario de biodiversidad, en varias regiones del país. Entonces, aquí tenemos el honor de tener una de las redes aquí presente en esta sala, que la estamos construyendo en el departamento del Cesar, que está al norte del país, ha sido un territorio históricamente minero, pero hay varias comunidades ahí que están apostando a transformar sus sistemas productivos y poner la biodiversidad, como incorporarla mucho más y sus medios de vida. Entonces, ese es uno de los proyectos, ahí también estamos usando el ciclo de monitoreo. También estamos construyendo una red en 16 complejos de páramos, que es un ecosistema estratégico en el país. Es una red también de monitoreo comunitario, y por último en la Amazonía también estamos construyendo otra red y también estamos usando el ciclo de monitoreo. Entonces, pues como contarles que esto es como nuestra apuesta por ahora. También hay algunas de las personas de la red de la Amazonía que están conectadas pues a esta sesión. Entonces, pues interesante como reconocerlos, y finalmente pues agradecer justamente a todas estas comunidades que nos han abierto pues las puertas en sus territorios, que nos han enseñado un montón sobre este proceso. Realmente ha sido un proceso de aprendizaje mutuo con ellos. Entonces pues sin ellos realmente nada de estas herramientas ni nada de estos proyectos pues podrían tener sentido. Y también pues resaltar que en el instituto al menos este tema es muy femenino, y yo creo que el monitoreo comunitario algo tiene que atrae como muchas mujeres investigadoras en el instituto. Entonces ahí puse algunas de sus fotos pues como para dar ese reconocimiento, y ya, muchas gracias.
Okay, extra round of applause for presenting in 2 languages. Okay, next we have Bibiana.
¿Mejor así entonces? Bueno.
Pues muchas gracias a todos por estar acá y qué bueno que haya tantos participantes. Vamos a continuar y creo que viene muy bien esta combinación de este marco anterior, porque todos esos retos que acaba de presentar Camila pues son los retos que enfrentamos en todos los proyectos de monitoreo de la biodiversidad. Acá particularmente yo les quiero mostrar una experiencia también de la Amazonía. ¿Cómo que? No, todavía no he pasado, estaba señalando. En donde lo que quiero como destacar es lo de la identidad, ¿sí? Entonces, ¿por qué? Ahora sí. Ya, listo. Porque este proyecto o este proceso es una de las medidas o uno de los ejemplos que está ocurriendo en la Amazonía, en donde pues, por iniciativas del gobierno se quiere transitar de núcleos o áreas de deforestación a núcleos de desarrollo forestal. Y particularmente esta experiencia es en uno de estos núcleos que está ubicado en Colombia, en esta transición de la Orinoquía a la Amazonía, en donde es uno de los núcleos de desarrollo forestal que tiene contenido en su mayoría un resguardo indígena. Pero la particularidad de este resguardo indígena es que fue un resguardo indígena creado, es decir, no existía, fueron 3 etnias indígenas que fueron llevadas allá, y desde su creación, es decir, desde los 60 que fue creado, ha estado, digamos, experimentando todas las consecuencias del conflicto armado, es decir, ha tenido muchos desplazamientos, han ido y vuelto, han tenido muchos bombardeos, bueno, todo lo que está asociado al conflicto armado. Entonces, asociado a eso, pues este proyecto ha tenido como respuesta, como es un proyecto en deforestación, o sea, una transformación a la deforestación, pues la restauración. Y esta restauración es con propósito, porque no solamente es restaurar y recuperar el bosque, sino también como eso desencadena la recuperación social, es decir, la restauración social también. Y esto impone también un reto distinto al monitoreo de la biodiversidad, porque no es solo el monitoreo de la biodiversidad, sino también lo social. Entonces, en este sentido, la restauración es una opción para el retorno, y más o menos esto evidencia pues, la condición de cómo está el resguardo. Entonces se estructura una estrategia o un plan de restauración que abordó los diferentes ejes, ¿no? Social, fauna, agua, vegetación y suelos. Y esta restauración, pues por supuesto, incluía diferentes criterios y elementos, en donde todos estos criterios pues, fueron los que se definieron para armar el plan co-creado, es decir, cada uno de estos elementos se estructuró con la comunidad y asimismo su monitoreo, ¿no? Entonces, esta restauración en términos de especies, de áreas, de propósitos, todo fue definido con las comunidades, es decir, en dónde, cuándo y cómo, y toda la implementación pues, fue realizada por las comunidades. Entonces, el proceso incluía materiales, material vegetal, áreas de enriquecimiento. Y como lo más importante, la definición de acuerdos, la definición de metas y, como mencionaba Camila, acuerdos para el uso de los datos, acuerdo para el monitoreo y acuerdo para la restauración. Y como mencionaba Cami, pues siguiendo el ciclo de monitoreo y sobre todo pues las ventajas y beneficios que tiene el proceso comunitario, ¿no? Que es la definición y adaptación constante, espacios para la toma de decisiones y fortalecimiento de instituciones. Y acá solo quería mostrarles pues que esta primera etapa tuvo una implementación con cámaras trampa y grabadoras, en donde todo el proceso pues se realizó con la comunidad, ¿no? En donde toda la gestión de información fue liderada por la comunidad y pues como integrando el desarrollo de tecnologías y asimismo, pucha. Gracias. El desarrollo de tecnologías y esto mismo de manera simultánea con la comunidad el cálculo de indicadores. No sé, cálculo de indicadores que cada uno de ellos está asociado a uno de los criterios que les mencioné previamente. Asimismo, pues indicadores acústicos que en todos los casos, como mencionaba Camila, cada uno de estos indicadores o cada uno de estos o variables que se definieron, el reto es cómo poder pasar del dato capturado en campo a que llegue a los repositorios institucionales, a los repositorios como el CIP o GIF, y finalmente pues tratando de optimizar pues para cada uno de esos indicadores están tratando de generar flujos de trabajo que faciliten ese tema. Y acá lo más importante es que lo que les queda a las comunidades en la memoria no es el monitoreo, no son las especies, sino en este caso el retorno, ¿no? Entonces al final hay otros indicadores pues que son los que nos retan ahora, ¿no? Cómo medir que esto sí está funcionando, pero para la gente y no solo para la biodiversidad. Y bueno, hay acá 80.000 recomendaciones, pero creo que se puede resumir en que los datos pues no son el fin, sino son esa herramienta para la captura y toma de decisiones en territorio. ¿Ya?
All right. I know we have a lot of people in the front. If you want to, in the back, if you want to come up a little bit front and make more space, we are overflowing. But we appreciate everyone's interest in being here. Next up, we have Mabel Fernandez talking about self-determination and data. And we need a translation for this. Okay, and Mabel is going to speak in Portuguese. And por favor, habla un poco despacio. Please. So we don't have translation in Portuguese? So talk slowly. This is why we were.
Waikai, boa tarde a todas e a todos. Me chamo Mabel, sou mulher indígena do povo Apurinã, da terra indígena Catitu, do sul do Amazonas. Nossa contribuição hoje para o simpósio é o trabalho de autodeterminação de dados, perspectivas indígenas sobre a governança e a pesquisa no Brasil. Pensando em novas formas de governança de dados, é um passo essencial para garantir a autodeterminação e a soberania dos povos indígenas sobre seu conhecimento e território. Quando pensamos em autodeterminação e soberania dos povos indígenas, podemos falar muitas coisas, mas principalmente sobre direito dos povos indígenas a serem consultados previamente sobre qualquer atividade que nos implique e nos interesse. Fica cada vez mais claro para nós, povos indígenas, que isso inclui os processos de pesquisas científicas em nossos territórios. Nós, povos indígenas do Brasil, possuímos ferramentas de autogovernança. Entre elas são o Plano de Gestão Territorial e Ambiental, PGTAs, e os protocolos de consultas. Os PGTAs são os nossos documentos produzidos para planejar, proteger e manejar o nosso território. PGTAs também são ferramentas de combate da perda do nosso patrimônio natural e cultural e descrevem nossas práticas tradicionais e a nossa visão do manejo e da preservação da biodiversidade presente em nosso território. A imagem aqui, ela mostra onde a gente já tem PGTAs na Amazônia e que elas já estão divulgadas, publicadas, né? Essa aqui. E elas são feitas, elas foram feitas através de algumas organizações que nos ajudam, né? Que nos contribuem com essa preservação. E esse mapa, ele mostra a múltipla visão e as recomendações sobre a nossa governança. Com os nossos objetivos, o PGTA, ele tem como objetivo garantir a autogovernança, a autodeterminação dos povos indígenas. Temos os nossos protocolos de consultas, e os protocolos de consulta definem a situação que devemos ser consultados e como o processo de consulta formal deve ser feito. E aqui eles mostram o protocolo de consulta, né? Onde a gente já tem protocolo de consulta no Brasil. PGTAs e protocolos de consulta fortalece a governança ambiental, territorial e as ferramentas não contempladas, né, de forma explícita, aspectos relacionados à pesquisa científica e à gestão de dados delas, né. E eu vou ter que pular, né, por causa do tempo. Queremos, com tudo que a gente vem fazendo e trabalhando na busca da nossa autonomia e da nossa governança de dados, né, queremos o protagonismo indígena na produção e conhecimento dos nossos parentes, né, dos nossos conhecimentos indígenas. E aí eu me bananei aqui, porque tive que pular. E o protocolo de pesquisa deve ser, né, uma das coisas que a gente vê muito ao longo das nossas lutas é que a gente tenha, principalmente no slide 5, né, a partir da nossa visão indígena sobre governança territorial, protocolos de pesquisas, culturalmente, eles têm que contemplar consentimento livre, prévio, informado, incluindo principalmente nós dizer não, né? Acordos de acesso, todos os dados produzidos na pesquisa, participação efetiva das comunidades em todos os ciclos da pesquisa, planejamento, tomada de decisão, reconhecimento formal como coautores das publicações, autonomia e controle do uso de dados, como rastreamento, salvaguarda de proteção dos dados sensíveis. Queremos protagonismo indígena na produção de conhecimento e como nossos parentes brasileiros dizem, nada sobre nós sem nós. Resultados. E, para isso, pesquisas em nossos territórios devem ser garantir a participação, coautoria e a soberania dos nossos dados. Vou para o final que já deu, né? Quero falar aqui, quero agradecer e quero ressaltar, quero agradecer todas as organizações que são nossos parceiros, apoiadores, né? E quero ressaltar, o conhecimento ancestral sustenta o mundo. A resposta somos nós. Demarcação já. Meu Deus, eu fiquei nervosa no final. Quando eu olhei para ele, eu fiquei dois.
Now he's going to draw them.
Hi everybody. I'm not going to introduce myself because I introduced myself earlier, but this is, I was having a bad day when I put the title in, but what I'm really talking to you about today is a bit about the modelling process and how can we add care within modelling. This is some work that Lydia and I and others have been working on with some non-Indigenous researchers as well who are modellers. Next slide. So first of all, I just want to start off with some reflections. So during my PhD, I was working on the short-tailed shearwater, which is a culturally significant species for Tasmanian Palawa people. But during this project, I was supervised by only non-Indigenous people. And so I was trained in non-Indigenous methods, even though I was an Indigenous person. And I think that's one of our big barriers within our university systems at the moment, and all university students coming through. And so this project, no information went back to the communities. The community still doesn't have access to the database. The database is one of the longest living seabird databases in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's 70 years of seabird data. And so some of this work is reflections back on this research and how I can help other modellers and other researchers embed care within their research. One of the reflections as well, and this is something that I've been reflecting on a lot in any of the research that I've been doing, is just how and which knowledge systems are chosen in research and who decides what knowledge systems are more important than others. And that's often the position of the researchers themselves and who's in charge of that research project. So how can we shift the decision making back to Indigenous people through research, and how can we set up frameworks and methods to support Indigenous decision making and Indigenous knowledge within research? Next slide. So this is my country, that's Murrawarri country, and if anybody's heard of the Murray-Darling Basin, our land is on that, and it's been one of the most mismanaged water systems. When we look at it as Aboriginal people, our water snake isn't flowing through our systems, and our community is concerned about the health of country and what does that mean for our people and our songlines going forward. But we have never had our Indigenous knowledge included in the hydrologic modelling systems, and how could we do that going forward? Next slide. I've already touched on why care matters, so I won't touch on that again, so we'll just move forward. So these are some of our thinkings around collective benefit. I'll just step back so I can have a bit of a read. So we really want to be looking at that modelling system and how do we engage with Indigenous people. Because when we're modelling, or lots of people are modelling, they use different data sets and they may not even know where that data is coming from. So when we think about data, again, data is not neutral, data is relational. It relates back to that researcher that collected that data. So how do we collect data through the modelling process that includes our Indigenous knowledge, or includes the things that we want to be including, such as our cultural significant species, such as our spiritual connections to our water snakes. So how do we do that? And what we need to be doing is being included in that conceptualisation of the data, but not only that, where the model is going to be modelled and what species are included in there. Authority to control, I think we spoke a lot about that, and it's the heart of our care principles, and we really need that Indigenous governance. But not only that, like, how do you share the model data back to communities in a format that community can use and understand? So when I think about our water snake on country, I want to know why it's not flowing, how can it flow, how's it affecting the other species on my land, and what we can do to actually manage that going forward. But I can't do that if all the data is on a user face that we can't use as a community, or if it's all locked up within government systems. Next slide. And responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility to support Indigenous research, to support Indigenous voices. In Australia, we're 3 to 4%, so we can't do this work ourselves. We're reliant on allies, and we're reliant on really strong allies to support us. And this means that we want allies that are filling that technical gap, not taking control and not telling us what we need to do and what we need to model or what we need to research. We want to be working with communities who are supporting us throughout this research. And ethics, when we're thinking about ethics, we don't want to cause further harm to our people. We want data there that's going to support us, support our decision making. We want recognition for our knowledge systems. We want to be included in the attribution. We want our knowledges to be protected through this process. And this is what the care principles are designed to do, help people understand how Indigenous voices and Indigenous decision making can be implemented across the research project, but also within modelling. Next slide, please. So to finish off quickly, this is my call to actions. Pair care with flair, pair care with flair, pair care, pair, fair, and that one, you've got it. And add in Indigenous metadata, which we've also touched on, but importantly, we need the outputs. We need to be able to make our own decisions for our own communities. Thank you.
Pointer? Oh, Molly has it. Okay. Now it's going to be your pointer.
Now he's my partner.
And this is Katie Jones talking about the care principles.
Yeah.
Indigenous data knowledge.
So, sure, Mike.
We have one seat up here. Someone want it. 2 seats up here. Come on, don't be shy.
Don't start my time yet.
Buenas tardes. Hello. Oki. Nistu Nadanako Katie Jones. Nimoktoto Anskapi Pikani Tiksikesi Tapi Kiape Maki Kwan. My name is Katie Jones. I am an enrolled member of the Blackfeet Nation and I'm of European descent. I'm the Community Engagement Director for the nonprofit Wise Ancestors and a plant ecologist by training. As a visitor here, I do want to acknowledge and offer gratitude to the Muisca people who have stewarded these lands for millennia and continue to carry that knowledge forward today. And today, with my co-author, Dr. Lydia Jennings, I'm going to present on the recommendations from the Earth Data Relations Working Group for practical application of the CARE principles in open data science. And I'm not going to define CARE, so much gratitude to everybody who has already put in the time to get us up to speed there. So globally, Indigenous people, though representing only about 6% of the global population, protect a disproportionate amount of the biodiversity on Earth. Indigenous people hold land tenure rights or directly manage over a quarter of the terrestrial protected lands. And of the 36 recognized biodiversity on the hotspots on the planet, Indigenous people are active participants in the landscape in 31 or 86% of these regions. Nonetheless, Indigenous peoples' expertise has been largely excluded from conservation efforts and settler colonial systems of scientific inquiry. The relationships to data about Indigenous homelands is often absent in digital environments. This lack of visibility and participation in open science and environmental research was the genesis for the Earth Data Relations Working Group. This group arose to explore how to apply existing data principles, namely the CARE principles, in open science contexts and to provide concrete recommendations for research practices. Participants included both Indigenous and allied participants from all career stages, institution types, and many disciplinary backgrounds. Together, we asked the question, what does it look like to activate Indigenous data governance in open science research? Following a year, almost a year of conversation, the Earth Data Relations Working Group offer recommendations to NGOs or researchers working in biodiversity or earth science contexts for implementing the CARE principles. These recommendations range from on-the-ground activities to data management ones. We utilize the medicine wheel, recognized by many Indigenous peoples of North America for its lessons about cyclical nature, of time, of the balance between all things, seasons, and aspects of self. The EDR brings the data specimen life cycle into this concept. First, in the northerly direction, assessment and internal communication. So this is really the do your homework. Take a look at your own priorities and perspectives and think about where you fall with respect to this work and where your values lay, and learn about the communities that you intend to work with or that you hope to work with. Don't put the burden of education on your tribal partners. Then when you're ready, once you've completed that work, reach out to tribal partners and in the places that you wish to work. Be open to new ideas on data and relationships to place. And where appropriate, develop formalized agreements for how that research will occur and how generated data will be saved or published. Then in the southerly direction, we get into the digital landscape. In biodiversity data sets, we know that ones and zeros represent species occurrences on the landscape that are interacting with the environment. And adopting, well, what we don't know is that there are the human connections that are there. And so applying indigenous metadata or local context labels provides an opportunity to bring visibility to those relationships to data. And then finally, in the data relations, share your experience with colleagues, promote use of indigenous metadata and ethical practices so that it becomes normalized across a discipline, even for individuals who wouldn't otherwise identify themselves as working with indigenous data. And with that, I say, 60 needs it. Thank you for being here and for engaging on this topic, and thank you to the session organizers and Living Data for hosting this conversation. Oh, okay.
While we're transitioning, let's go ahead and welcome Carlos Miguel Pais, who will talk about gestión de información agua. Hopefully I said that correct. Thank you. No photos. No photos allowed. ¿Necesito eso o no? ¿Necesitas eso? And also, does anyone need the translation QR?
Naistari Paitaresawa, Naemuni Jairo Javier Bisbicus, Kaxasu Upigdan, Kaxasu Aguaruf Migua. Es nuestro idioma del pueblo indígena Agua del departamento de Nariño, de Colombia. Somos un pueblo binacional que estamos Colombia, Ecuador, en el Pacífico nariñense. Estaba saludando y pues estaba presentándome también, que mi nombre es Jairo Javier Bisbicus, yo soy del pueblo Agua Unipa, la organización de segundo nivel, y pues quiero a todos ustedes agradecer por este importante espacio que nos han brindado, y es una gran oportunidad para nosotros de poder también tener ese espacio de diálogo intercultural, y pues somos muy agradecidos, y pues saludar a todos los pueblos del mundo. Nosotros tenemos un trabajo que venimos haciendo como pueblo Agua Unipa. Poner en la primera diapositiva. Bueno, pues empezamos diciendo que entre los saberes y la tecnología, ¿no?, que es como la gestión de la información para la vida y el territorio del pueblo Agua, estamos pues también con nuestra compañera Camila, de la parte del apoyo técnico, pues es un proceso y un trabajo intercultural que se viene fortaleciendo. La siguiente. Bueno, en este sentido, pues la unidad indígena del pueblo Agua Unipa, pues representa un proceso de lucha y de resistencia por el territorio, un proceso de reivindicación constante y permanente, en la defensa del territorio, en la defensa de la vida, y pues representa, diríamos, una experiencia que se viene llevando a cabo en la articulación desde los saberes ancestrales con pues las herramientas tecnológicas pues que están, diríamos, al servicio también de la defensa del territorio. Entonces, en ese sentido, pues también queremos decir que ese trabajo, pues el territorio Agua Unipa, pues abarca un gran territorio amplio, y estamos pues como en varios municipios, tanto en Tumaco como en Barbacoas, Ricaurte, Samaniego y Roberto Payán, ¿no? Bueno, la población como tal hacemos parte de unos 27.000 habitantes en todo ese territorio que mencionamos, y todo ese territorio pues comprende, diríamos, más de 200.000 hectáreas de territorio. También este trabajo pues tiene que ver con la relación, diríamos, y la conexión desde la cosmovisión agua, o sea, desde los 4 mundos que nosotros decimos que es allí donde están los seres vivos, y es por eso que nosotros hablamos es de cosmoambiente, ¿no? El ambiente pues relacionado con nuestra propia visión de ver el mundo. Y de esa manera pues es como frente a múltiples amenazas de extractivismo, de cambio climático, de degradaciones también ambientales, es como la UNIPA pues ha venido impulsando, diríamos, varias acciones de restauración ecológica, de conservación comunitaria y fortalecimiento de los procesos comunitarios, y esto pues también nos une en el pensamiento propio y la ciencia moderna, ¿no? Que pues diríamos que esos 2 conocimientos son muy importantes, el cual pues demuestra, diríamos, que la tecnología puede servir al territorio cuando pues están orientados y guiados pues desde los principios del pueblo aguano. También quiero pues manifestar de que este es un pueblo que la Corte Constitucional de Colombia en el 2009 pues declaró como un pueblo que está en vía de extinción, de exterminio, tanto física como cultural, y pues en ese sentido pues hemos venido, diríamos, llevando a cabo diferentes procesos para poder seguir perviviendo en el tiempo y seguir viviendo en el territorio.
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Para complementar a la autoridad rápidamente, nosotros queremos comentarles que la organización, como ustedes lo mencionan, son el tema agua. El pueblo agua está dirigido pues también a iniciativas de las cuales se destaca el sistema de información geográfico manejado por las mismas comunidades indígenas, también en articulación con el Observatorio de Derechos Humanos y también ligado al monitoreo comunitario. Ustedes pueden observar las fotografías donde la comunidad son los que ellos brindan todos los datos para fortalecer estos sistemas, y de igual manera va alineado a las problemáticas ambientales también por el conflicto armado, y de igual manera por la contaminación del oleoducto trasandino, por la contaminación de crudo. Entonces, a partir de ello nació la necesidad de que la misma comunidad tenga sus herramientas para poder contra pues ciertas entidades demostrar que el territorio tiene una realidad particular y que su defensa es mediante esos datos. Entonces, toda la información se articula también con el Observatorio de Derechos Humanos mediante los delitos ambientales que se presentan en su territorio, ya que está ubicado en el hotspot Andes Tropicales, hace parte del Chocó Biogeográfico, y recientemente en esta semana reportamos 2 nuevas KBA, áreas claves para la biodiversidad, por el pueblo agua, que somos las primeras en temas étnicos en registrar eso en el departamento de Nariño. Entonces, toda la información ha servido para poder ahora ser reconocidos de manera global con los datos que se manejan. La Guardia Indígena son los que ellos toman cada una de las coordenadas, cada una de la información, porque solo los que viven en el territorio conocen, saben y pueden reportar esos datos. Tenemos a la actualidad herramientas SIG, también como los drones, GPS y demás equipo también intercultural, porque no solo es la parte técnica, sino que es por las comunidades, para las comunidades y desde las comunidades. Entonces, todo el monitoreo ha implementado también acciones en el registro de nuevas especies. La comunidad recientemente encontró una rana endémica también que no se había registrado pues en Ecuador, en Panamá, sino que ahora se registró también en Ecuador, y que ese es un nuevo hallazgo, dado que nadie había investigado sobre este tipo de ranitas, y que por ende también ha impulsado a que el observatorio cuente con mayor información, a la toma de decisiones, a que de verdad se puede articular la academia con las comunidades indígenas, permitiéndoles avanzar en la toma de decisiones. Y de igual manera, pues nosotros queremos reconocer como esta frase, que entre saberes y tecnologías florece la defensa de la vida. Cada dato, cada mapa, cada registro son semillas de memoria y de autonomía.
All right, next we have Clara. And also, we have one more presentation after that.
Gracias, buenas tardes. Voy a hablar en portuñol, otra lengua.
Voy a ir muy rápido porque falta otra presentación. Entonces, hoy os voy a presentar los resultados preliminares de un proyecto, CESP, que es una llamada del GBIF para fortalecer capacidades entre nodos. Se llama Desarrollar una extensión de datos para documentar la biodiversidad, la sociobiodiversidad. Es un proyecto coordinado, bueno, propuesto por Brasil, pero trabajamos juntos con el CIP Colombia y con Argentina, el nodo de Argentina. Entonces la idea era pensar cómo podíamos organizar datos. Estamos hablando de gobernanza de datos, también tenemos que hablar de las plantillas de datos. Cómo podemos organizar la sociobiodiversidad, cómo podemos juntar los nombres científicos con los nombres populares y sus usos, y cómo podemos garantir el derecho y el holder, bueno, de estos datos. Entonces, básicamente hicimos proyecto, reuniones online, un workshop en persona en Río de Janeiro, para definir una extensión de datos con vocabularios controlados y cómo íbamos a validar esta extensión con 3 estudios de caso. Entonces, desafíos, no quiero entrar aquí, pero bueno, voy a hablar un poco. Problemas con fondos, infraestructura. Ya vemos que el idioma ha sido un problema, un desafío, podemos mejorar seguro. Cómo gobernanza, soberanía de datos, datos accesibles, datos sensibles, cómo gestionamos esa parte, cómo integramos el conocimiento tradicional y el conocimiento científico. Y en Brasil fue aprobado este proyecto reciente que se llama Entre Ciencias, Territorios en Saber, en Diálogo. Próximo. Resultados, básicamente, eso es la idea de cómo podemos organizar una plantilla de datos. Eso, a la izquierda tenemos términos o títulos de columnas de una plantilla de datos que podemos usar para definir uso de las especies. Tenemos en amarillo vocabularios controlados como use to, para fines medicinales, genéticos, ornamentales, espirituales. Sería un vocabulario que podríamos escoger. Parte del organismo, organispar, usamos hojas, raíces. Use by type, ¿quién usa esa información? ¿Y de dónde que viene esa información? ¿Es dato propio? ¿Es una entrevista? ¿Es un artículo? ¿De dónde vienen esas informaciones? Pero también tenemos datos que hay términos que no son vocabulario controlado, como el use by holder, de quién tiene esta información. Son los apuriná, son los cayapó, son los guaraní. ¿Cómo usamos esa parte? Hacemos un té, un aceite, un sirope, una descripción de la función, del porqué y de la forma de preparación. Esas son posibilidades de organizar datos. 3 estudios de caso, uno, un libro de 1800 de especies medicinales brasileñas, otro estudio de caso de levantamiento de informaciones de una comunidad de pesca en el litoral de Río, y otra de cómo organizar datos de colecciones actuales de herbarios, que normalmente esa información no está bien referenciada. Entonces también vamos a trabajar con este estudio. Próximo. Next steps. Vamos a presentar la validación de esa extensión con 3 estudios de caso y ajustaremos la extensión. Necesitamos también datos de animales. Estamos trabajando con plantas, pero también sabemos que animales son un desafío. Y futuro, tenemos el task group del GBIF. También hemos intentado validar esa extensión en el TEDWIC y necesitamos ajustes técnicos en el IPT, en herramientas y más discusión sobre gobernanza de datos. Thank you.
Ok, y el final es Denise Liao. Oh, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to do the pointing? Sure. Do you want me to do the pointing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Hello, everyone. I am Denise Leal. I am a lawyer, a Brazilian lawyer, and a researcher and I am here to talk about the DSIs, the digital sequence of genetic information, and how this data has been used in a negative way and how we can improve it and comply with the rights of indigenous people. Please. So, Brazilian national data repositories facilitate the access to DSIs through international platforms, which means that we have all this data free to anyone to access it, to share it, to see it, to use it. And it's non-consensual, the use of this data, because it's potentially violating rights related to ownership. Please, next one. Yeah, so here we have there's a lack of a specific legal protection. This means that we don't have a law, we don't have a regulation that talks about DSIs, we don't have it in Brazil, and we don't have a treaty or anything to say how we can deal with it in a legal way. So in this context, the indigenous right to informational self-determination is guaranteed. This is the question. Because indigenous people have the right to decide about their data, the data of their territories. So this is self-determination, but can we say that is it guaranteed? Because we don't have a law, we don't have a system, any specific system. So we are going to see now how it's guaranteed. And please, the next slide. No, no, not the last one. It's before. No. More. Yeah, it's here. I think it's here. So yes, we can say it's guaranteed. We don't have any specific regulation, but we do have another regulations that we can use to guarantee this right. With that said, we can go to, just to explain, this is a map, a Brazilian map of the indigenous territories. With that said, I want to explain that we have legally indigenous territory in Brazil. So these people, they have rights related to the data of these territories. And this includes as well rights related to data. The next one. So here I have some specific articles and regulations that explain how we can work and guarantee this self-determination and how DSIs can be seen in a legal aspect. With this, we can guarantee that we have to comply with the consentment, with asking indigenous people if we can use DSIs from their territories. Please, the next one. Yeah, so these are the main arguments, and two main arguments. The first one is that we have socio-environmental laws and treaties that guarantee indigenous rights, and the second one is the data protection rights. So indigenous people are people as everyone else, and they have data protection rights, and we need to comply with this. We are not complying because biodiversity data is free to everyone to access, and it doesn't have any information on indigenous territories. So we do have data that have geo-reference information, and during many times it's indigenous, but it's not there. We cannot read that it is indigenous. Please, the next one. So here we have the conclusions. The conclusions that we are violating rights, and we have these rights. We can see them. We don't have in a specific way, but they are there. So the next. Here it's my research. If anyone wants to read it or wants to talk more about it, please, the next one. Contributions, but you can go to the next one. And here, I wanted to invite you to collaborate. So I wanted to ask if you want to collaborate and work together to write about these topics and to make maybe regulations and legislations that are more inclusive in our countries, because we must work to ensure that the guidelines governing the road include more perspectives. I am part of the Data Goya Institute. We are going to Guatemala next week to talk about data protection, and I really want to go to more countries to guarantee that the new regulations on data protection includes indigenous people. So please contact me. I am here to help with this.
All right, thank you. Amazing work. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I think it's fair to say that Indigenous topics often need a little more background time for each of our different nation states. But I'm so appreciative of all of your attention for being here, and I welcome to have conversations in the hallway. We need more sessions like this, and again, thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us, and also to my core organizers, Ricardo and Clara, thank you for putting this session together.
Going to the gym?
I know, I feel like got my steps in. ¿Sí?
Las pusimos a anotar las fotos.
Oh, sí, sí, sí.
Ah, no, ya las vimos.
All